And we could go on in each of our areas of business. Anytime we have a relationship getting refunded or paid, whatever it may be, from a different company, we've got to build that trust and those morals. And at the end of the day, we talk about this is we want everybody to be confident in the service they provide and the transaction, where if they run into a customer in any situation, we say the grocery store, at the grocery store, that they would not turn and walk the other way.
Hey everyone, welcome to Crossroads Conversations with the Lewis Brothers, where we aim to share real stories about running a successful family business, working through adversity, and pouring back into the community that keeps our door open. We're your hosts, Matt, Shelby, and Taylor, and we bring you relevant local business advice and automotive insights that are sure to change the way you look at running a business, and maybe even throw in a plug for you to do business with us.
Welcome to Crossroads Conversation with the Lewis Brothers, episode 43. Shelby and I are in the studio today, excited to share with you, I'm going to say some knowledge, Shelby, but a lot of this we've learned from an early age and been tested on it multiple times.
Yeah, no doubt.
Today's subject is the ethical compass. Now, that phrase is something much easier said than done. We're going to talk about navigating moral dilemmas in leadership. And in any business, you'll be tried not once, twice, but hundreds of times to see what your morals are, what your ethics are, not only for you, but for the rest of your team. So this is going to be a great episode today as we get to unpack what we've seen, through our leadership and through our business here, hopefully to share with you.
Absolutely. And last week, if you did not take a chance to watch it, go back and watch it. Episode 42 was fake it until you make it. The leadership mantra of helping or hurting your business. And we talked about generally no one really plans that and how that works, but kind of how you plan to plan so that you're not in a just reaction business. So that was a great episode we got to break down. So make sure you tune in with that. Also, tune in at our local dealership level at lewissuperstore.com. You can visit us, see our local specials, see our offers, see over 1,000 vehicles we have available for sale on the ground. All right, so now we transition over to our core topic. What we're talking about today is navigating our way through the ethical compass. Matt, where do you start in this?
That's right. We're going to talk about anchoring your business. Now, defining your non-negotiables, values, and principles. That sounds like a lot. But there's one specific word that I want to throw out there.
Okay.
It's defining.
Mm-hmm.
Defining. Because everybody, whether you've defined them or not, have non-negotiable values and principles. But as we start thinking about our organization, and Shelby and I might be on the same page, or Shelby Taylor and I might be all on the same page with our non-negotiable values and principles. But if we have not defined those and then shared them with the rest of our team, we're 3 of only 270 that are out there speaking what our core values of the business actually are. So as we start unpacking that, defining, and I would add to that, communicating that with the rest of your team, that's where it all starts.
I think that's really important as you grow, or even if you're not growing, but what you have and what you think and then what you've shared is so important, because if it's just in your head or just in a small group and not shared, at the opportunity, but when they get in a scenario when their back's up against the wall, and it's not always large things and it's not always something that's astronomical, but it's the little things that compound. Mm-hmm. And so if they don't understand that clearly non-negotiable, here's our game plan, here's how we handle this, here's how we handle, and it's not just a playbook. It's just like, hey, this is how you should react in a situation.
That's so good. There's a common theme there that if you listen to other episodes that you'll hear, and it's the communicating and it's the expectation and it's getting the team on board and making sure they completely understand it. And like you said, it's not just in a handbook. They hear us talk about it, whether it's at our cake day or our sales meeting rallies or in our manager meetings. Like, you constantly have to talk about it so they not only see it in writing, but they see it in practice, because that's when it sticks. So don't just think that because you added another page into your employee handbook or sent out a memo that all of a sudden, boom, you're good to go. It's like anything else. You've got to introduce it. We got to get our catalyst involved early on before we announce it. And then they got to help us put that in place. Because I'm just telling you, that you'll think everything's going great, and then all of a sudden, somebody will get tempted to get in the gray area or on the other side, maybe just barely of the fence in a ethical and a value perspective that don't line up with yours.
Yeah.
And usually that happens. This is such a slippery slope. Usually that happens because somebody's behind their goal.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Or shortcut.
They're shortcutting. They want to make you proud that they hit the overall goal for the department, or they want to win because it was their next bonus level.
Yeah.
And I would say our business is a little bit trickier than others out there because of the amount of people we have on commission-based pay.
Yeah.
We'd have to have HR in here, but I would say we're somewhere between 80 and 85% of our employees are on some type of a commission or bonus pay plan.
Yeah. And so you have to think about a lot of people think about it just purely sales. And there's so much more to it.
Sure.
Most of our operation is in fixed ops, which is parts or service or body shop. So it even gets down to the cellular level or, a sub level of like people think of like fudging numbers or maybe information, but it even goes to the fact of like when the manufacturer releases a recall.
Yep.
And says, hey, install this part, but only 50% of the cars actually need it, or 30% of the cars actually need it. But they still say to it. And we've been down that road before where we've seen like this person's been fully trained. They were certified in that. They know how to do that recall. And then somewhere down the line, they thought, shoot, no one else is here inspecting this. This is in the door, right? Door panel has to be off to be fully inspected. And all I'm doing is putting a different rivet in.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And we've seen that before where down the line where someone got caught of just a bunch of recalled parts in a dumpster somewhere, and they didn't have their very clearly non-negotiable values or principles, and they knew they'd get away with not having to actually perform that because it didn't change anything on the vehicle. It still performed like it was supposed to. But they didn't have that moral compass. If they were running behind and they didn't have all the hours they needed for that week or for that month, they could shortcut that if they didn't have very clear, do what's right, even when no one else is looking.
I think that's a great example. I think it's time worthy here to stop and just kind of rapidly, let's rattle off all the different areas in our business, because a lot of business owners are out there thinking, they're like, okay, where does my business fit in there? And most people, when we talk about this subject, they think about a customer.
Yeah.
And did you overcharge them?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or did you not give them enough for their trade?
Yeah.
Or estimate the job right? It's way deeper than that for us. Obviously, customer facing is important, but I'll start rattling off a couple here. When you start thinking about our relationship we have, besides the customer part, with the banks. We're one of the few businesses out there where you can buy the product, and then you can sign the paperwork for the funding at it's probably over 30 different lenders now that we've gone through a certification process to be able to sign everything. That's a convenience to the customer.
Yeah.
But we have to hold up our ethics and what we said we would do on representing the customer there.
That we say it is what it actually is, right?
Whether it's their income, their job time, where the down payment came from, that it's actually them and not their roommate or their aunt or their uncle or their brother or their sister.
That leaves a lot of room for maybe that a bank won't finance a customer that doesn't at least make $1,800.
Yep.
Right? And so then a finance manager would know that, and the salesperson would ask the customer, hey, what's your income before taxes? They'd write it down. They're like, I'm not saying this is what we do. I'm saying that this happens all over the place. And if you don't have very clear written principles or morals that say, okay, do you have any, and they won't just straight out flat lie about it. They'll say, hey, do you have any other income?
Yeah.
And so they say, well, hey, do you get it? Do you ever sell anything on the side? Do you ever sell anything on Marketplace? Or do you ever, and they're like, okay, would you say you at least make $200? And like, yeah. So they take them from $1,600 to $1,800, put it on the app. And then that becomes a breach of contract between the dealership and the bank.
That's right. And they'll also ask questions. We're talking to a finance manager in this situation. They'll also ask questions like, how much is the most you've ever made in a month?
Yeah.
Or what's your potential?
Yeah, they'll coach them.
They'll coach them through that. Well, what if you hit all your bonus levels? And some of you guys are like, does that really happen? Well, let me tell you a case in point. We'll have a customer comes in, likes how our vehicle's priced, likes our dealership, we'll submit them over to finance, and it gets turned down.
Yeah.
Because the payment we're trying to get them approved for doesn't meet the algorithms of the payment to income ratio. Well, they'll call in to Bank XYZ, and the customer says, well, down the road, I got approved with Bank XYZ. So finance manager calls in. They said, yeah, down the road, it showed you put on their applications, they made $100,000 a year. When you submitted this over, you showed $65,000 a year.
Yeah.
So then you go talk to the customer, and they're like, well, no, I could prove 65. At one point in time, I got close to 100,000 in 1 month if it did that over 12 months.
Yeah.
So then that gets in a situation, you want to talk about backing you into a corner there, is you have got a finance manager, a sales manager, and a salesperson all staring at you that's in charge going, just do the same thing they did down the road.
Yeah.
The customer doesn't care. They just want the vehicle. You're affecting me, my goals, my income, and the livelihood for my family. So you want to talk about being torn, being in one of those meetings while the customer is on the showroom. You got 3 people trying to hit your goals. They have a way to do it because it got approved down the road. You want to talk about testing you.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'll tell you just like the theme that if anyone ever asked me, in a situation of maybe someone's calling you out for, hey, you shouldn't have done it like this, and there's more to the story, or if someone's just asking, hey, how do you do this? And I would tell this to anyone just the same way I would tell you guys, hey, there is not a dollar amount of money that you can make that ever makes it right to not do what's right. There's not a dollar amount. You could not make $1 million, $2 million, $10 million, $100 million and say, that's a lot of money to do what's not right to make that money today. Because it's going to catch you down the road. And that's easier said than done, right? Mm-hmm. When that customer's sitting there and they're like, hey, we're making good money on this deal. This helps us sell this 300-day-old vehicle. The salesperson needs another unit. The finance manager, needs another car across his desk. And you're like, it's not the right thing to do.
That's right.
So then they're all mad at you, right? And they, in their heart, they know it's not the right thing to do. But then they go home and, their family or their friends are like, hey, how was your day? It's like, oh, it wasn't good. I had this deal all ready to go. Talk to the bank, talk to the customer. And my boss wouldn't let me sign the deal. They're like, what? They don't give them the whole story, right? That they coached them up on their best month. Yeah. And that's just one of those things. And it's better to have that conversation and that expectation. So it's like, why would you put yourself in that scenario? Mm-hmm. Larry, Bill, why would you do that? That is not correct. We're not going to do that for this time or that time or any time. So I feel bad that you put yourself in that scenario, but you need to go tell your customer they're going to need more cash down or a cosigner in order to qualify for this.
That's so good. And I hope you guys are understanding it's not easy. It's not easy to do the right thing when we're in a world of so many people living in the gray area. And we've hired people from other dealerships. I'm not calling anybody out, but from other dealerships where they've allowed that, or maybe management didn't even know about it. We're in a position where, Shelby Taylor and I are pretty heavily involved. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying that there aren't things that get past us.
Yeah.
But we got a pretty good, and we've got some long-term employees that know that no, they're not going to do that.
Yeah. And that's the culture and the tenure of the employees. It might make it past phase 1 because new salesperson or new sales manager, they might not even know different. Let's just give them the benefit of the doubt.
Okay.
Right. Someone taught them some funky math. Yep. And so then they figured this and this and this and this. But then maybe a finance manager or an office manager is going to say, hold up, this doesn't calculate. This isn't correct. Our QC person in the shop is like, hang on, did we actually put this part on? I'm looking at this here, because, think about in your business, if you're doing something that is not facing a client, you're doing stuff in the ground, right? You're doing work under the ground, or you're doing something behind the wall that you knew that just, hey, real quick before I go home, if I do it right, I'm going to have to come back tomorrow and spend another 4 hours on it. Or I could I know a shortcut, a way to do this, and it'll work.
Sure.
I'm out of 12 gauge wire.
Yep.
but I happen to have some 14 gauge wire
Yep.
and I know it's going to work, right?
Yep.
Now, does it meet code? And did you put it in a box? And does it have proper wire nuts? And is it GFCI?
Yeah.
You know? And so more often than not, if you don't have those very clearly written things, they'll shortcut that if someone's not holding them accountable.
That's so true. I mean, it's no different than if you were doing some plumbing and you're like, instead of putting copper here, let's just run PEX pipe. Nobody will ever see it. It meets code. It'll work. I've never had it fail. That's not morally correct. Would you make more money in the short term? Yes, you will. It will always catch up with you. It might be hard for you to identify it down the road because 5 years down the road, 7 years down the road, 3 years down the road.
It's going to be someone else at a different job.
It will be, but it will come back. And what we say to everybody is that at the end of the day, you need to be proud and confident of the service you've provided, the vehicle you've sold, that it's been at a fair transactional price.
Yeah.
Profitable? Yes, it can be profitable.
Yeah.
We have to make profit to stay in business.
Yeah.
We have to make profit, to continue to invest in our business and in our employees. That's not a bad word.
Profit is not a bad word. It has to make sense for a consumer in order to transact, but they're going to spend money anywhere.
Sure.
Right? They're going to need to change the oil or they're going to need to buy a car. I've said it many times, I'll say it again. They're not paying for your product, they're paying for the experience. And so make the experience good, make sure that everyone's delivering exactly what we say.
Yep.
And so they're like, hey, this is worthwhile.
On the other side of it, you started going into service there, from a technician standpoint on morals there. But then also, we've got a warranty administrator that submits for warranty payment, whether it be from the manufacturer or an aftermarket warranty on getting repaired. There's, again, the same type trust there.
Yeah.
Because they can't actually see the vehicle. And we have different statuses with each of those companies because every once in a while they'll audit us, to see if, hey, do we have to have the checks and balances on every single submittal on this dealership? Or have they done really good every time we've spot checked them and they can fast track through this?
Yeah.
But it's really easy to try to add half an hour, 1 hour, 2 tenths here, extra gaskets here, saying that it needs this and needs that, and maybe it didn't really need it. And they're always in the ancillary. If you ever hear about fraud, especially internally, it's always 1,000 cuts at once.
Yeah, it's not, a big item here.
If somebody transferred $10 million.
No, it's calling for supplies for something for a job and ordering, 10 extra sacks of Quikrete, and they happen to end up in the back of your truck, or that's an extra pallet of lumber and it wasn't needed for the job. So
I think, and we could go on in each of our areas of business. Anytime we have a relationship getting refunded or paid, whatever it may be, from a different company, we've got to build that trust and those morals. And at the end of the day, we talk about this is we want everybody to be confident in the service they provide and the transaction, where if they run into a customer in any situation, we say at the grocery store, that they would not turn and walk the other way.
Yeah.
Because they have full confidence that they know what they said. And even if there is a problem, they've got full confidence that we'll fix it.
Yeah, there's always going to be problems, right? But, if everyone has the same values in mind, the same principles, we did what we say we're going to do, we offered what we can, and if we need to come back to it and try it again, then do it. But you should be able to lay your head down on the pillow at night knowing that no one's chasing you, no one's mad at you for this, this, and this, and that you did what was correct for the people, for the business, for the employees, and that it gets out of hand. There's plenty of movies and shows that everyone likes watching that you're like, ooh, that's kind of slippery. Oops, that that looked good today, but what about tomorrow, right? So, and I think it's important to wrap this portion up of it's very clear to understand what is your game plan. Everyone needs to know out of your head what's your game plan, how to communicate that, and where's the yes or no, and communicate that often. And experiences of like, hey, we were in this scenario and this and this and this, and here's what we did. And that's tough because I think it was last week or the week before we talked about meetings. If 2 pizzas can't feed the meeting, that's too big. Well, you need to communicate that to the whole team. And if you have the meeting with the managers have it with this team and then that team, it might get a little bit watered down. Yeah. But it's tricky, like in our keg days, it was our main areas where we have our entire team. you lose attention really quickly.
You do.
Right? So when you're doing your KK, I'm watching, and probably vice versa, I'm just watching the people of like what perks their interest, where they're engaged, where they're not engaged. So you have to have some of that so that they understand, hey, and a lot of times where we get to see it is our employee of the month, kind of describing who they are before we say who they are and the things that they do. I'll tell you, Saturday after the car show, we were closing up. I don't know what time it was, 5:45 or 6 or something. And I saw a lady out in front of Chrysler.
Okay.
Had a Chrysler 300 service had been gone since 1:30 or something. And I just happened to be driving by. We were moving cars, and looked like she was changing her tire.
Okay.
In front of the shop. Looked like she was getting stuff out of it. And so I walked over there. Oliver was with me. We walked over there. And I said, hey, ma'am. I said, are you changing your tire? She said, yeah. I said, okay, is your tire messed up? Or she said, I don't know. It won't hold air. I said, okay, can I help you, please?
Yeah.
She said, well, it's like it costs. I said, well, it won't cost you anything. I said, they don't pay me to do this, so I'll just do it for you. I said, can I borrow your keys? So I pulled her over to the shop and to use a lift because I knew I would.
Sure.
The donuts always have no tire pressure, so I knew it. So I pulled her over there. Well, I loved this because we were talking about the employee of the month and the values and the morals. And service had closed at 1:30, right? And it was about 6 o'clock. So I had to open the doors, pulled in and on there, and I said, hey, Oliver, will you go show her where the waiting area is, show her where the coffee machine is, where the sparkling water? And he said, huh? I said, sir, go show her where I said, she gets first class experience. That's with my 11-year-old. I said, Dave, just go show that. I said, ma'am, he's going to show you where that is. This won't take me very long. Well, I loved it because one of our technicians just happened to be driving by. And he said, hey, what are you working on? I said, I'm just putting a spare tire on. He said, well, you think we can fix the tire? I said, I don't know. I hadn't taken it off yet. So he helped me take it off. Like, am I capable? Yeah, I've taken a lot of tires off. But he just happened to see me leading by example. I didn't flag him over, and I didn't say, hey, you need to do this, right? He just hopped in full speed ahead, and he didn't ask for a tag number, what we're doing, to clock in, clock out. And he's like, look at these tires. There's no way. They're like the wear bars were hanging out. And I was like, man, where are you going? She said, Little Rock. I said, oh, my. So I looked around in our used tires to see if we had a tire everywhere. I couldn't find a tire. I said, you need to go find like a Tire Tracks or a Walmart that's still open and get a tire. She said, you sure this isn't going to cost you? I think so. Absolutely. So we put it on there, fixed her up, ready to go. I said, hey, thank you so much for helping out. I said, you didn't have to do that. And she was so excited. And we had done nothing but put her tire on. But it made me proud to know that he saw that someone needed help the same way I saw someone needed help. And the moral compass said, hey, let's stop what we're doing.
That's such a great example. Not only you leading by example, but then showing that obviously that's been ingrained in the rest of the culture and the expectations.
Yes.
So really defining, to wrap this subject up here, defining your non-negotiable values and principles. Ours are pretty simple. You've got to be able to have confidence in the transaction or what service you're providing, that no matter where you see the customer, you'll know exactly where you stand. Because we didn't have a little white lie in there that we're chasing, like, what did we say?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, did we do what was right?
Yeah.
And did we treat people how we would want to be treated?
Yes.
If you'll just pause for a second and think about that, and there's like, man, there's no way that I would want to do business this way. Well, then let's not do that way with a customer. So, those simple values and principles, but we do have to always talk about it.
Yeah. Automotive. Fun fact quiz of the week. Always love this, just random off the wall, whatever it may be. Which major automotive manufacturer back in 2010, speaking of, faced a scandal for intentionally programming millions of its diesel vehicles to cheat on emissions tests, resulting in billions in dollars of fine. So the EPA says, hey, cars need to be X standard, right? And diesel was the vehicle that would go further and got good fuel mileage. It generally gives this away, but I'll give you 4 options: Toyota, Ford, General Motors, or Volkswagen.
Now, I'm not going to tell you the answer yet, but I know the answer.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you why I know the answer, and then we'll come back to the answer later. Is because this manufacturer that got in trouble for this, the fine they paid went to billions, went to the states, divided up to put in the infrastructure for EV chargers.
Yes.
So we just happened to know that because in our early days, years and years ago, We were involved on the other side of it.
Yeah.
You know.
Receiving some state assistance on putting in EV chargers. So yeah. All right. So now we're going to talk, same idea, different, navigating the gray.
Okay.
So navigating the gray of the non-negotiables, values, or principles, making tough ethical calls when profit meets principle. We talked about that a little bit with finance, but it really dives into the world scenarios of business objectives like maximizing profit, hitting, that next bonus level, seemingly conflict with your ethical obligations. Like leaders sometimes will make decisions of, I know it's right, but I know this is so easy just to do this, right? I know that deal's there. I know it can turn X more hours. I know I'm competing against the next Ford dealer, the advisor next to me. I know that I can get away with this, and it's just a little thing there. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Here's what I like to do, is I like to walk people through solutions, and sometimes they don't like listening to how long-winded it is, but it's a journey that it takes to get there. You got to learn from. So I'm going to talk about finance again, and then we'll get over to techs. I'm going to give you a situation where you got to make a tough call. And we talked about earlier about fudging income, fudging job time to get the deal approved. Well, let's talk about the other end on a straw purchase.
Okay, so what's a straw purchase?
So a straw purchase is when somebody comes in to buy a car. I come in to buy a car.
Yeah.
Okay. And at the very end, we agree on figures. And when it's time to do the credit app and stuff, I give your information.
Okay.
Okay. Not because I've stolen. It's not an identity theft.
I'm your brother.
I'm your brother. And you know it.
Yeah.
You know it. Like, my brother, we're going to put this in my brother's name. It's going to be my car, though. That's a straw purchase, because what that's saying is I'm not representing to the bank the person driving and buying the car.
Okay.
This is a very gray area that a lot of people get in, and it's easy to say, okay, run it all through Shelby. I'll take the paperwork to him, get him to sign it. But that's not how our dealer agreement reads with all the finance institutions. It says we will represent the person. And so then the salesperson, let's say, is talking to me, and they're like, no, we need to get you on there. And I say, well, my credit's really, really bad, and it'd be a high interest rate. What I like to do is to walk people through a scenario. We're a long-term business here, 79 years. And I said, you know what? If we did the straw purchase deal, okay, which we're not going to do, but if we did that, what does that fix? Gets us a car deal today.
Yeah.
But then what happens when Matt in 3 or 4 years comes in to buy another vehicle? He's in the same boat. Yep. We're not helping long-term there. Yeah, we saved him 3 or 4 percentage points on interest rates, but we didn't fix this. So my coaching is Matt, I understand your credit's really bad. Let's put you on there. Get your brother to co-sign. He's already agreed to be on there. So that then next time we've graduated out of this, that's an experience that you get to help somebody do, not only for today, but to help in the future.
Yeah.
So that's how you flip something like that from a negative and an ethical issue of going, okay, this is represented to the bank correctly, plus we're helping them go forward.
And that's the optimistic solution, because, gosh, it shows its face every single day. Every single day. They've worked really hard with the customer. Now, whether the customer knowingly is doing it or not, they might have a story otherwise than not having bad credit. Like, no, I always put this in his name because actually he's the owner of the company. And the sell or be sold. Every day you're going to sell or be sold, right? Sure. And so then that salesperson went from selling the consumer to then it'll flip the script, and the customer will sell the salesperson why he needs to go in his and his. And at the end of the day, the salesperson is just trying to hit his quota for that day. And if he doesn't have very strong understanding in your moral code and your ethics and your principles, then he's going to fully buy into that.
Oh, for sure.
He's going to go to your sales manager and say, hey, I changed the name on the deal. Will you reprint that for me?
Yep.
And how often does that happen? Yeah. Like properly, changing a name on a deal.
Oh, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. Like, they try to.
Well, yeah, but think about that. Like, if I come in and I do the whole deal, but then I'm like, hey, I need to add my wife.
Yeah, right. That happens a lot.
So that we see that at the desk all the time.
Sure.
Like, hey, actually, I'm gonna put this in my company name. Legal to do as well.
Yeah.
So they're used to name changes. So then the salesperson knows, hey, I can slip this through, whether they mean it or don't mean it.
Yep.
And so they're like, hey, can you reprint this still? I had to change some info on the purchase agreement. So salesperson should be the first screen, but the first backstop is sales manager say, well, what changed here, right? if I never talk to the customer, what changed here, and look at the credit up, like, well, who's that guy out there? You know, who's that guy? Well,
Who's
that's
the
Matt.
straw guy.
Yeah. Why isn't Matt on the deal? He's like, well, no, he was just doing negotiating for his brother. He's like, okay, well, where's this guy at that's on the paper? And they're like, he's working today. It's like, okay. Because do we do deals like that? Deals can be done like that, right?
Yeah, all above board. Everybody understands.
Yeah, that everyone's on the same page. But where the issue is that it's not for the person who's at work. It's for you, but it's a straw over to here. Yeah. So we see that trying to happen across the industry every day.
I'm going to go deeper for just a second because that's a one-off situation. Now, all you entrepreneurs, listen in because you want to talk about a multiplication factor that buries businesses, unfortunately. Here's how it happens. And we see this for people that want to get into startups of the automotive business. So when I do a transaction and we finance it, okay, we are floating that money till we get reimbursed back from the bank. Go listen to our episode on cash flow if you want more details on that. Number two, we have given our promise and our guarantee to the customer that we're going to send in the payoff on their vehicle. Now, when a business is growing, you get in this gray area of a cash flow issue. And you have a choice. You can either pay off the customer's $30,000 on their vehicle that was owed to it, or you can go buy another vehicle so you have inventory to sell.
Yeah.
And in your mind, you're like, man, maybe I could wait a week or so to do their payoff because I've got to buy more inventory if we're going to sell something else to be able to be profitable this month. So it's like you're in the in-between, like you're going to pay it off. You're just delaying a little bit.
Yeah.
What happens is that never stops.
Yeah, because then the payroll on Friday hits.
Yep. They're like, oh, shoot, wait one more week. You know, if we got to pay their per diem, we'll pay their per diem.
And then it gets even trickier than that you might have a couple lines of credit with a couple different banks.
Yep.
You know, so you've got Bank of America, you've got Ford, you've got Ally, whoever it has. You've got Arvest. And so then you might, because with a line of credit, you don't send in the title generally. To say, I want to borrow, and they see what the amount is. Right?
Sure.
So you can't just make up an amount. You can do less, but you can't do more if you've got a $30,000 car. So that trade-in comes in, and you're like, shoot. So you slow play the payoff.
Yep.
Right? So they owe $35,000. You're like, hey, I've got a 20-day payoff here. I can wait on that. The customer financed in the per diem there. Yep. So I got 20 days. I can take that $30,000 of the one I just sold. I can even slow play paying that one off of my floor plan.
Yep.
And take the actual what the bank gave me. And then you're going to take that trade in and you're going to go over here to a different bank, Arvest, and say, hey, can I get $30,000 against this one?
Yep.
And then when it gets really sticky, you have a second line of credit because you didn't have the title, and you go over to Bank of America and say, hey, I want to borrow $30,000 against it here.
Yep.
And you're like, what? Well, and we've seen it happen at other dealerships many of times if they don't have that very clear written, do what's right. And that was taught from us from a very young age. Like, if the business runs into the ground and you did it right and you were thrifty and you worked super hard, then so be it. So be it. But do what's right no matter what.
No matter what.
And we saw people, it's a federal offense. We saw people go to prison for it. That you double leaned against it. You didn't pay off a customer's trade. You want to talk about not sleeping good, but you get in a cash flow situation.
So that's one transaction. Let's just roll through this real quick. That's one transaction. And the vehicle you sold, you had $40,000 against it at the bank. Yeah. Okay, so you're out that $40,000. The trade you needed to pay off, which was another $30,000, but you went to two of your other lines of credit and used it as collateral because you'd gained trust with them that you didn't have to provide the title.
Yeah.
So then that's another $60,000 there, plus the $40,000. So we're over $100,000 in one transaction, and you're just trying to kick the can to have a big weekend to make up for it all.
Yeah.
I don't care how much you made on the car. You could have made $10,000 on the car.
It does not drop a bucket of water.
Not for $110,000.
No.
And then how fast do you think that word spreads on the street? They didn't pay off my vehicle.
Yep. And I didn't get paid my commission on time. And
we've seen it happen time and time again, where people get into that
instead of them just saying, we talked about it in the previous episode of saying, I don't have this figured out. We're going to need to work on this, right? They're like, no, I got it. You're good. Yeah. Just go out there and sell that car. Yeah, I'm good.
Shelby, one of the things that people don't see, and we didn't see it all because we're not 79 years old, but is that they look at our dealership now and the 26 acres and all this inventory, and they're like, man, it must be nice. And it'd be much easier to run there. Let me tell you one thing. If you can't manage $1,000, you can't manage $100 million. Okay. But number two is we started with 6 cars.
Yeah.
In 1946, we started with 6 cars.
Yeah.
And then we got to 10.
Yeah.
And then we got to 20. So, and we had to figure out how to effectively manage 150 people with the right morals and ethics before we could do 250.
Yes.
And there's been times where we've met and we look at our cash report multiple times a week and we go over it with managers. It would say, freeze on buying stuff right now, sell only what we have because of our cash flow situation. Because we're not going to bend on paying off the car, doing what we said we do to our customers, paying our employees, our obligations, just to try to leverage ourselves over here to make more money potentially.
And that's like a lot of this stuff, maybe you're on the other side of this listening like, oh, no, I would never do that. No, I would never do that. I'm just telling you, somewhere along the line in your just being a human or in business, you're going to be like, I don't want to tell people the cash needed for an operation like this is astronomical, just
big,
ridiculous. So you couldn't sell enough cars, just sell cars to fund the cash needed. It's the whole operation. And so it's one of those things like put your pride aside to say, wait, hang on, because you've got, accounts receivables, accounts payables, the warranty stuff, everything. It gets so after a big weekend, which you would generally think, oh, in a business, you have a very large weekend, and I'm working on not talking about cash flow through this whole thing, but that would be good, right? Now, it's a delayed good, right? There's some money there, but it's just a small drop in the bucket. But what you did is just strap yourself completely on to this large cash monster, and you do it every weekend over and over and over again.
Well, it's such a slippery slope because you did it one time just to get you out of
and
hole.
it worked.
So different than gambling.
Yeah, it's the exact
or
same
any
thing.
other type of addiction out there is businesses the same way, and it worked.
Yep.
You're like, okay, that wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
I got the money shifted over in time. I did this, I did that, and it just multiplies. And then your team sees you doing that, whether you think they do or they don't. Then they start replicating that because you're their leader.
Yep.
And they follow the speed of the pack, and you're at the front of the pack.
Yep.
So then all of a sudden your business is written up in Arkansas Business and Attorney General and all the rest of the stuff. You're like, what just happened? Well, I'll tell you what happened. Rewind the tape 3 years.
Yeah.
Right there's where it started.
Yep.
So we always tell our management team, like, they need to come ask us about these.
Yeah.
Let us help walk them through it. Let us be the bad guys.
That's a really large thing to understand because at the end of the day, if you get to that level that you can make that decision, you're generally, what you're going to say.
Sure.
You'll listen to it, you walk through it, and you help them, but you get to be the scapegoat that you're saying, because one, you haven't directly, specifically every single time had to talk to that customer. So you don't have this whole emotional buy-in. You're like, hey, here's the facts you told me. No, that does not make sense. No, we're not going to do that. And if that doesn't sit easy with them, tell them, hey, we're trying to protect you, protect our customers, protect our business, but here's what we're going to do and not do. And let them let you be the scapegoat.
That's it. Doing that provides a buffer layer in between. So if you take a sales manager and they can blame it on you or I or our family, that we're not going to do this straw purchase, we're not going to fudge on the application. That allows them to save some face, saying, I'm putting in a policy that the business has. So then their salesperson is not necessarily mad at them. And I'll tell you, every single time we make one of those calls, everybody's heard about it for the minute because they want to hit their goals for the day. But 24, 48 hours, the next week, you can see them. They know it was the right call.
And we've had plenty of people miss goals. Our stores missed being number one in this region or this region because someone else will do that.
Yeah.
Just the chance they don't get caught. And they're like, Shelby, why would you do that? Like, all you had to do was take this still and this still, and you would have taken the number one spot. It's like, that's not what we're here for.
It's not worth it to us to get an award or recognition at the expense of a customer.
No.
Or at the expense of a relationship with one of our companies we do business with. Because at the end of the day, and this is what you were going to earlier with what Dad just pounded into our heads as a kid, if we said we're going to do it, we're going to do it. I don't care what the expense. If we said we're going to do this and it comes out of our mouth, you do it.
Yes.
Same thing he says. He says, if it's owed, it's owed. And we can hear that. If it's owed, it's owed. Pull out the checkbook and go write it.
Right. So then taught us to be very careful with our words. To when you said something, you better mean it, because you're going to have to put your money where your mouth is. Right. So be very diligent with what you say. And then, because if nothing else, if you don't have your word, you don't have anything else.
Yeah.
Right. Like, never mind the fancy and all the things. If you're not going to do what you said you're going to do, which used to like, Shelby, that's simple, basic. And like, really? Like, in today's world of keyboard warriors and all this stuff, people aren't even what they say they are over here. So to be able to have that, it means something to somebody. And at the end of the day, you can sleep good, right? And you don't have to wonder about who's chasing you or who you screwed over or whatever it is. Like,
I think that rolls right into the point about ethical dilemmas. They're rarely black and white.
Oh.
So one thing I do want to point out here is we're making this sound easy. It's not easy. And I am going to encourage you, before you ever make a decision on this, always, always, always pause and go pull all the facts. Because here's the deal. A customer, they'll tell some white lies on you to get what you want. No different when we were kids and with mom and dad.
Oh, yeah.
They'll do the same thing. And they'll say the service is false, so they get a hold of sales. Well, they just didn't get the answer they wanted.
Right.
Or they get a hold of,
And your employees will do the same thing.
They do the same thing. So I always pause before I let my emotions get involved.
Yeah.
Now, early on in my career, I let my emotions get involved.
Oh, yeah.
And boom, I wanted to attack it right then, put the fire out.
Yep.
But now I go gather that information, because I know that the customer probably just didn't get the answer they wanted.
Yeah.
And they're fibbing just a little bit.
Yeah.
To try to get this or that. So always go verified first.
Most definitely.
Before you think your team just screwed up.
And your team will see that. Like, when I get a ping for bad Google review, and it's like, oh my gosh, why didn't we call that customer? How hard it is to do it in this, and what are we doing here? And I'm just like,
yep.
You go check, like, hey, how's everything going? Hey, have you had any, da-da-da. We've gone through that. And they're like, hey, this. And it's like, okay, well, does this have anything to do with that? And they're like, it's like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Right? But just 98% of the time, you're going to want to just fly off the handle like, no, you do this and you do it like this because that's how we said, and that's what works.
Yep. But the customer could have led you down the wrong way.
Oh, yeah.
They could be like, well, I've always done my blah, 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 my service work with y'all, and now it needs an engine. And you go pull the history records, and it was here when we PDI'd it, and it was here 2,000 miles ago. But what happened the other 100,000 miles?
And my point that I guess I was getting to before I got wound up is if you go and just fly off on your service manager, he might not even show you, but he's going to be like, here's the facts.
Exactly.
And you'd be like, I'm an idiot.
Yep.
And so then if you'll have their back and just come at it from a different angle, they're going to be like, man, this guy does care. Man, these people do actually listen to what's going on. They just don't take it for surface value. And then they help you navigate through it. So
that's so good.
All right. So speaking of, we're talking about gray areas. We asked, what major automotive manufacturer faced a massive scandal? Now think about that. There was a gray area where they were injecting, I don't remember.
It was the programming.
It was the programming to re-inject something into the exhaust gas recirculation to bring the tailpipe emissions down so it passed. So in their programming, it became an engineer, because from the top said, hey, we have to hit 40 EPA, or it has to hit 98% smog level, whatever, right? And so then the guy was like, or the person was like, oh, I don't know. And he's like, hey, what if you did this? What if you programmed it to detune at this point? Or what if you programmed to inject at this point? He's like, hey, I made it work. And then the head guy was like, you made it work? And he's like, yep. So a massive scandal in the 2010s for intentionally programming millions. It was Volkswagen.
It was Volkswagen, and I don't remember the mileage on it, but you hit on it exactly there, is they did it through the programming of the car. And then when it hit X amount of miles, it went back to the actual tune of where it ran and drove.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
And
so when they went to get
pass
state inspections, yep. And so then that, you don't talk about slippery slope. They made it work, and they made their car pass, and people loved them because they got good fuel mileage, and they had good power, and their reliability was great. But then it cost them billions of dollars, plus their PR relationship of doing what they said they were going to do, having a good product, following all the standards, whether you believe in the standards or not. They got a black eye for that.
Bad black eye.
It slowed them down most definitely for a minute there.
Hey, but it was kind of good to see that money, and we don't follow all this legal stuff as much as like where the chain of the money goes, but that they use that money then to inject back into the automotive industry.
Yeah, that was pretty funny because we weren't looking for it and we didn't know it was there. But when we were installing first level VV chargers, they said, hey, there's some grant money out there for infrastructure. It's like, okay. And so then you had to submit for it and all the things. It's like, where did this come from? And somewhere in there, it showed from the Volkswagen emissions. I was like, okay, that's cool that it didn't just go in somebody's pocket, like it circled back around.
Yeah, I think too, kind of like in the college world, I hear of in college sports, I hear of when an athlete gets fined, that goes in a collective pool then for scholarships. In that area.
Yeah,
so it's like okay, good. Well at least it's not just going towards somebody's salary.
Yeah.
Hey, the next subject, the ripple effect. I like this one because it's long-term thinking, and there's only a few that can think really far long-term. Yeah. They can say that. I like being able to have the ability to think long-term, but put the short-term game plan in place that lines up with long-term.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the ripple effect, and it's building a legacy of trust through consistent ethical leadership. So when we think about that, Shelby, when we make these choices and these examples, one situation at a time, what that starts building up for a legacy of trust through not only our employees, all the companies we're connected with, and then our customers too, of like, no, you can trust those people. That is way more important to me than somebody saying we were the cheapest.
Well, 1,000 times over. You cannot buy enough customers. Mm-hmm. Or, what I mean by buy customers, like, hey, come into my store because we were the cheapest, right? We had the $5 oil change or whatever it was. Because at the end of the day, what was delivered with that? What was the experience? They're never going to remember like how much you cost or, any of those things. They'll just remember how you made them feel.
That's right.
The experience.
How was it?
How was the experience? And so building that legacy of trust through consistent ethical leadership of knowing that you do what's right even when it's not profitable. You do what's right even when it takes longer. You do what's right even when it means you don't hit your bonus level. You do what's right even when no one's looking. Mm-hmm. Or even after they've closed, or even after you don't even get commission for it, or there's 1,000 different ways that gets cut up. And so then you do build that name in the dealership, and then it goes outside the dealership. And so you can proudly wear your Lewis Automotive shirt to a ball game, or you can go to a PTA meeting, or you can be out and about through the community, and you're not worried about someone just flying off the handle by like, man, they treated me like crap, or man, I can't believe they did this, or they overpromised me this, or they charged me an astronomical amount for a warranty, or they said they were going to fix this and they ended up putting used tires. There's so many different ways. It's like, that's the last thing. If you were at the grocery store with your family, or you happen to go to a ball game and you get Eddie McEddickson, and he's just like, probably just rowdy anyways, but then your team gives him a reason to be. You're just like embarrassed, like, really, do I get any time away that I'm not just hammered by this business? That's the long term.
That is the long term. And hey, I do want to be crystal clear with everybody out there. It doesn't always go that way for us.
No. We're saying this because we've learned it the other way.
We've learned it. And then we've learned too, like, what is the response when somebody does need to dump a bad experience? Because it happens.
Yeah.
We drop the ball.
Daily.
Our new vehicle sales, figuring out the price on what you're paying for a vehicle, it's complex. Let's be honest. Like, there's things you got to qualify for. And if you don't qualify, we don't get reimbursed for it. Yet you got to advertise it with that because everybody else's price has that. So like there's all these complex parts. then you need to know that if you run into that situation, have the confidence that we're going to figure out a solution and be able to back it up.
Just be timely in it and communicate, at a high level of just communicating there. And it's funny you say that, and I'll throw you this stat, so maybe if you're not paying attention, maybe you will. When people buy a brand new car, they have crazy high expectations. Sometimes a used car still carries that expectation. Yeah. But I want you to know this stat, that a Ferrari, who's not built in America, a very high-end vehicle, average price of $430,000.
Sure.
$430,000. When it gets shipped over here to the United States, very, very thorough process. It gets detailed, its original place of build, and then it comes through the port, and then it gets detailed before then it's handed to the dealership. They then, on average, spend over $2,700 detailing and PDIing that vehicle, that $430,000 car, to get it ready for the consumer. Of areas that were missed from Ferrari, and then the second hand were missed. It was over $2,700 on average to get that vehicle right. So we're gonna work on getting your $30,000 Escape or Maverick right. I promise you.
Sure.
But the manufacturers doesn't have a whole lot of margin, and we have literally no margin in that car. So we're gonna do it and make it its absolute best. But just understand that there needs to be some cohesive understanding that we didn't build this thing, right? This is how it was delivered to us. And if something is owed, then we'll make it right. But don't hate on just like, hey, why don't all these lines line up? Because
don't. And this is real. Don't just call our employees up and dog cuss them.
Yeah.
They didn't build the vehicle.
Nope.
They're trying to assist you. They don't know why you keep disconnecting your phone, but with a smile on their face and not laughing at you, they're trying to walk you back through it.
Yeah.
They don't know why you didn't do this or didn't do
And you
that.
brought it in and it's had a check engine light, but it doesn't have the check engine light anymore. And it's an intermittent issue. Like, okay, well, let's go ride together. See if we can find it. Like, I don't know. It's frustrating. I totally get it. Like as a consumer, I get it. But at the same time, if we can't diagnose it, then we can't fix it.
It's no different than going to the doctor's office and saying, hey, this has been going on. And they're going to send you away and say, for the next 3 months, 6 months, we want you to try this and then come back. It doesn't mean instantly you're just going to feel like $1 million.
No.
It's going to take some trial and error. And if the check engine light went off. So just remember that too. Yes, we're your connection between the manufacturer, but we also have to submit. I had a case the other day where I was helping a customer. I said, listen, we're not the one declining the warranty work. The person that's reimbursing us for us has declined it. We want to do the work. We want to fix your car. And we're one of those businesses, if you've ever wondered, we have a crazy amount of expectations from customers.
Yeah.
Think about the warranty. We got 10-year warranties, 5-year warranties, 6 year. You don't own anything in your house that has that type of warranty.
No, this dealership we just built at the maximum has a 1-year warranty.
A 1-year warranty.
A 1-year warranty. And a lot of times when we submit stuff, and our company's been great that helped us with it, right? But then like, hey, that's actually a wear and tear item.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? In the automotive industry, our Google reviews would be through the floor. They would be under the floor if we told people some of the things that we get told for this multi-million dollar dealership. Like, hey, actually, that's not part of that. That's actually going to be above and beyond, so that's okay.
Yeah.
We're going to still serve people the highest level. We're going to have very clear expectations of just making sure that they understand that, not just today, but all the way down.
So listen to this statement here about ethical choices, okay? Because I thought this is good, and we'll get your thoughts on it. Ethical choices are not isolated incidents. They create a powerful echo effect that shapes how employees, customers, and the community perceive and interact with the business. So echo, ripple, whatever you want to call that, if you do this and this, and this, sees it.
Yeah, I like that. Like that is so important, and often you don't get to see the ripple effect. And it's definitely a delayed ripple effect. But just understand that your decisions are very clear, here, and here, of we're going to do it like this. We're going to take care of the customer. We're going to treat others how we want to be treated. those things are going to ripple to the employees, and then hopefully they do that with the customers, and the customers like, you know what? Those people said they were going to do it. It maybe took a little longer, but they actually did it, and they followed up with it, and they followed through, and they were nice, and they were kind, and they went above and beyond. And they're like, that's a place I want to do business with.
You know, the ripple effect, you don't get to choose whether it happens or it doesn't happen. It always happens.
Correct.
And it's either going to happen with how amazing of an experience you did.
Yep.
Or how bad of an experience you did.
Right. And I guess the best way of seeing that is if you're at a lake and a mountain somewhere and you skip a rock and you see that water ripples. Like that's calming to see that. But if you see like a tsunami or a hurricane and very large waves, those are the same waves. And so that was how you handled a situation very clearly. And either way, you're fixing the car, so handle it correctly and mindfully and say, hey, what if we tried it like this? Would it be okay? Would it offend you in any way if we tried this, this, and this? That's the lake that you're seeing like, oh, that's calming. That was nice. Or the tsunami is like, oh my gosh, these waves are just attacking me. Yeah. Well, that's because you just went straight in and attacked and said, dude, why didn't you do this, this, and this? Whether that's with the employee or with the customer. Like a frustrated customer, an angry customer, a cussing customer, if you match their anger, you will never win. Never. We've gone through that with so many managers, so many teammates. It's like, okay, you are not allowed to go out and say anything for the first 3 minutes. Like you just need to go listen and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. I apologize. Like that's the most you can say, and you just take notes. It takes 2 people to argue. And so then if you can do that, then you're just like, hey, that was a tsunami. What we're going to do here is stand on the shore. We're going to let those waves go by. And then we're going to be like, oh yeah, that's where we needed to go. It's like, hey, sir, would you mind hopping on my boat? We're going to take you right out here.
That's so good. That's a great example on just looking at it down the road, pausing. Please don't let your emotions get involved. And they will if you let them. They will always get involved.
It'll get you every time. It's just natural.
It is natural. It's natural, but you got to calm it down to let the logical part of your brain think. So again, be in the long-term game, be in the legacy game. Of building your business one block at a time. There's no shortcut for that, okay? Doing the right thing one at a time, even if it costs you business, it'll pay dividends in the future. But it all starts with the rest of your team knows, what is your North Star? What are your morals? How are we ethically going to handle this? And how are we going to treat people? And if we say we're going to do something, we're going to do it. You got to communicate that first. It always starts with, you've heard us talk about this before, the internal customer before we get the external customer reflection, and that's your team. And that starts in the small meetings with your managers with their department. And then you circle back around. We were talking about our cake day. Cake day, we can't dive all the way into it because like you said, that they'll retract and they're not engaged. But if they've already heard it from their manager and you recap it real quick, it helps make it a little more sticky.
Yeah, most definitely. So don't miss those opportunities. All right. Well, frequently asked questions. Always loving to dive into a way that we could peel another layer back or just see what it is. So my question for you, in all these years of business that you've been doing this, the long and few years that you've been doing it, what's one thing that still genuinely excites you when you come to work?
I love the opportunity to help others be successful. It brings me a lot of joy to help somebody develop their skill sets to achieve their goal. And most of the time, that's not just a paycheck goal. It's actually the paycheck did what?
Yeah.
So if I've been able to sit down with somebody and help them put a game plan together on how to pay off their credit cards or how to save up this amount to buy their first home or how to take their family on vacation or then you see the excitement with selling some more cars or turning some more hours. I really like doing that.
Yeah.
I like achieving my own goals too, but I achieve them by helping other people achieve theirs.
Very much so.
So for you, after these years in the business, what's the one thing that still genuine and excites you when you come to work? Was that the same question?
That's the same question. So I didn't read what your question was, and so I had an answer, but it was exactly your answer. So the same thing. I love that. So think of that like no one raises their hands like, man, I love going to my job. Like I love my job. I just grinding. I mean, enjoy what you do, right?
Sure.
But just think about that. Like, think about when you wake up really early.
Uh-huh.
You're never just like, I love getting up at 4:15 in the morning.
You know what I mean? Let me
right?
see what fires I can put out
Like,
today.
you love what comes from that. And so then this, to echo what you said, helping those people and in every fashion, if you can get them to where they enjoy coming to work and the people that they work with, and that's by helping them be successful and saying, hey, what's next? There's a guy in the shop that I love to see his growth in the last couple of years that he's worked here. And it was just my management by walking around talking to this guy, and it's like, hey, what's next on your radar? And so then he was so proud. He would bring, when he had a daughter, he brought his daughter by. I was like, hey, I want you to meet Lucy. And it's like, And so I was like, okay. He's like, Shelby, I'm really trying to buy a house. And I was like, oh, you are? And I was like, can I give you a quick 5 minutes of like what you should do? Because he was like, I don't think my credit score. I was like, okay, here's what, based on my experience, right, wrong, or indifferent, you need to do this, this, and this. Well, flash forward 2 years later, he's bought a house. He's doing renovations to his house. And he's like, God put me here for a very specific reason because of you and how you've been able to pour into me. I'm like, this is so much more than wrenching on cars, right?
That's good.
And so in all those little micro conversations of all the employees, some of them much more, some of them not at all, but you try for all of them. If you can help them, then it's not going to work and it's not just a job. You get to really, really make a difference in a lot of people of all the fun. And then they work together so good and you're like, we've built something here.
You bet.
Right? And then it allows them to go have vacation, allows them to do things for their family. And you're like, that's what you do it for. It's not so you can sell another car or this, and this. It's just helping all those people putting all the dots on the paper.
Yeah,
so I definitely enjoy that.
Such a good answer. And I hope all you business leaders out there heard that. I'm going to tell you right now that every single day, there's doors that God opens for you to be able to use you in your place of business. But I've been guilty of this too. I don't step through that door because I'm too busy or I think I'm too busy. He's like, no, I need you to go through there because there's somebody, he wants to use you to be able to help those others. So that's good stuff. Hey, thanks for joining us today. It's been a great episode. Remember to subscribe. And if you'd leave us a review, that'd mean the world to us. That helps us get this content out to more people out there. And again, shoot us a text, shoot us a message, or comment on what you'd like us to cover. You can see all of our inventory at lewissuperstore.com and then crossroadconversationspodcast.com, where you'll find this episode and all the episodes. Feel free to share that with your team. Yeah. We do that too. There's subject upon subject there that somebody will ask about something. Just shoot them that episode over. You know what I mean? You don't have to reinvent the wheel here. We didn't. We got that from other people, and we send people episodes all the time on marketing, advertising, difficult customers, different employees, so on and so forth. So again, thank you for being an audience for us. So we're not just talking by ourselves, and you guys have a great day.
Hey, thanks for joining us today, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure to give it a like, share it with your friends and family, visit our website, and send us some questions. We want to know what you'd like to hear, who you'd like to hear from, and what you want to see, or maybe even some questions for us to answer about either the automotive industry or just business in general.